beyond excited to have her share a story with us. So please welcome to the stage Rosita Hendry.
Wow, thank you so much for having me today. And I just want to say it's been a real privilege so far just to witness all these youth performing and just really see the up and coming future artists of New Zealand. And before I begin today, I just want to explain to you why I'm actually up here sharing my story. So I really believe that our stories are very powerful. But sometimes when we come from a place like New Zealand that does really feel so far away from the rest of the world, it can be a little bit hard for us to believe that our dreams and our aspirations can actually become a reality. But what I'd like to do is to really encourage you, if you're out there and you are aspiring to be a future performer, whether that be in dance or in circus, that it is possible, but it's going to cost you everything. It's going to require a lot of courage, a lot of sacrifice, giving up sometimes time with family and friends, but it is so worth it. And you know, another thing I would love to emphasise that it's really, really important to take up every opportunity that comes your way. Don't despise all those small beginnings because you just don't know where those little opportunities will lead you in the future. So as I share my story, I just hope it inspires and encourages you in your own personal journeys. So as my introduction has said, that I am a Kiwi. I grew up actually here around West Auckland and Kumeu, later moved into Massey, and I was that child that just loved doing physical activity. I grew up with 5 younger brothers and a younger sister, so a rather large-ish family, but I loved climbing trees, doing anything active, and sometimes that equaled me falling off things, much to the horror of my mum, so she placed me in gymnastics at 4 years old. I really loved gymnastics. It really just fed that physical tendencies that I had, but I got to a stage around 14 when I realised I needed a little bit of a break from it. And if any of you here have done competitive gymnastics, you'll probably know what I mean when you say life ended up being gymnastics. I was doing about 30 hours of training a week by the time I finished, and I think I was trying to just keep up with my perfectionist self and needed a little bit of a break, and I kind of crashed a little bit emotionally at that stage. So I thought I might as well just take a time, have a break, and I thought that would be the end of anything sort of in that acrobatic field. During school I also was doing dance classes and music and decided to just focus on that for a little bit. I got to the end of high school and I was accepted into Apollo Theatre School, and this was a really fun program and predominantly actually focused on dance, but it really just grew me and challenged me as a performer. I also really always had that passion for anything physical. So whether that be sport, obviously the gymnastics, the dance, I love painting, I love playing music. Over the years I didn't know where that was going to lead me. Would it ever turn into a career at all? I also had this little dream. Now if you think about those dreams that you have as a child, my one was actually to join the circus. So this is those dreams that I maybe want to be a firefighter or an astronaut. That was my one. But it didn't really last long. It was just that little children's dream and didn't think about much about it over the years. Little did I know it was to actually come. So when I finished my time at Apollo, I got to that stage where a lot of us reach it at some point. So what do I do next? I don't know what to do with all these artistic abilities. And I had this little comment from a dance teacher, and she said to me, oh, why don't you look into something like Cirque du Soleil with your dance and gymnastics background? And to be completely honest, coming from New Zealand, I was like, well, that's something on the other side of the world. This is so far above my abilities. But I think a little dream just started to merge over time. And it started to grow. So I thought, well, I might as well just search out some aerial classes. Now I was really going down more the dance route at that time, but I did take that on board. And a couple of months later, I decided to go visit Melbourne. Never visited before, purely to do some dance classes. While I was there, 2 opportunities came up for me. Now the first one was for audition for a musical. I was very excited because this was in the path that I was going on the dance route. Went well. I had first two rounds, did the audition parts, made it through. Got to the 3rd round, and that was the singing part. And unfortunately, though I have some musical training, I wasn't really gifted with the voice, so that kind of ended my musical theatre career before I started it. But I also had another opportunity that came up to audition for a circus school. Now, I had really just been introduced to the circus world at that time. Did a couple of months at aerial classes, randomly saw online this audition come up. I said, well, take up an opportunity that comes, you just don't know where it could turn out. So what I did is I reacquainted myself with some hand balancing, did some acrobatics, put together a small dance number, and next minute I find myself at this audition. Then, a couple months later, I find myself relocating to Melbourne to suddenly start this circus journey of this whole new world. And in this, I think, there's a lesson for me that came out of it, that you just don't know, take every opportunity that comes up. You don't know where it will lead. Sometimes you end up with a new skill set by just taking these opportunities. You meet some new people that might change the direction for you. So I had gone to Melbourne purely to attend some dance classes and ended up pivoting and changing my direction into a circus career. So I thought, after that, life was set for a bit. I had my goals, I'm going to train at the school for the next 3 years. Unfortunately, I came back second year, first day back, and I fractured my rib. Now this, unfortunately, really just changed the whole path for me, and it was a little bit of a disappointment because I wasn't really sure now what to do next. It was one of those injuries that took almost a year to recover, so I decided to leave the school at that point. But I had this comment from a coach who said to me, why don't you look at moving to Montreal? And I had not really looked into that at that time, but she encouraged me, this is the place to go. It's the top circus hub in the world. There's a lot of top schools. She felt that I would have the chance of getting into the school. Now, I was at that point where I was really struggling in myself and my confidence as a performer, feeling like I'm from New Zealand and this is a whole new level. But her confidence in me really just helped me have a little bit more confidence in myself. So I did take that on board and started to look into the possibility of it. And I think, sometimes in life we go through these challenges. This was a moment that was potentially a negative that turned into a positive for me. And if I hadn't actually fractured my rib, though it felt like it was such a big deal in the time and it was such a disappointment, if I hadn't happened, I wouldn't have left the school. And I wouldn't have looked into the possibility of going to Montreal and then looking at training at the school there, which actually later propelled me straight into my full-time career. So what I did is I took that year to recover from my injury, save up a little bit of money, and I relocated myself to Montreal. Now I'll give you a little bit of word of warning. If any of you here would like to go overseas at any point, whether that be training in this particular field, I would highly, highly recommend before you go, you research the weather before you get there. So I arrived in January 2014, and keep in mind that in Montreal it's the opposite seasons. So we have summer, they have winter. And I got there, and it was minus 30 degrees on the first day. There were snowstorms for the first 2 days. The snow was up to my knees, and I literally was questioning why I was here as my face felt like it was going to freeze off. So I had made it though, and the first 2 weeks I prepared myself for this audition. Now I got there, realising I was a little bit the naive Kiwi who had no idea what I was doing. I had to have 1 year of circus training so far and didn't know much about the industry. I quickly learned that nearly every person I met was either there auditioning for the school at that time or had auditioned before. I met someone that was auditioning for the 5th time. So this was quite a big deal to be going to this particular school in Montreal, which is also called ENC if you're wanting to look it up after. So it was a major deal, and at the same time I think it was probably a good thing that I didn't know how big a deal it was. I kind of just didn't have that same pressure. And what I had planned to do is if it didn't work out, I was going to stay for the year and train. So it came audition day. Now this was quite a grueling process. That year, I was told later, they had about 500 applicants for the school. They were looking for roughly 25 for that intake. They were auditioning, the main one in Montreal. They had other auditions in other locations around the country and elsewhere. So it was highly, highly competitive. And I remember arriving roughly around 7:30 a.m. the first day, and then leaving at 10:30 p.m. It was a long process. We would have a whole day of an audition. The jury would come up, they would watch all day, then they would choose who would come back the next day, and then they would cut people, and then if you made it through to the second day, they did the same thing again. Got to the third, thankfully, and got to stay for the fourth, because I didn't want to go there 3 times. But it really was a long process, but it was also a really learning process of just being exposed to the circus industry over there. You know, and I was very fortunate to be accepted into the school, and next minute I sort of find myself in full-time training again. And I really did, I loved my time at school. It grew me so much as an artist, as a performer, but it didn't come without challenges. The first challenge that I had was the school is totally in French. So I did come from Auckland and I did not learn any French at school, so I pretty much knew un, deux, trois, and that was about it. I also had to say my graduation speech in French. Cannot tell you what I did. I said. Memorised it well though. Okay. And the other challenge that I was faced was the financial side. And often I've had a lot of young people come to me and say, oh, I'd like to go overseas, how did you do it financially? I've always felt that if you take up every opportunity that comes your way, you'll find a way to make it happen. So I grew up with five young brothers and a younger sister, so I had a rather large-ish family. And growing up, those things were a little bit tight financially. We did a lot of activities, and what we did is we used to busk to pay for it. And if any of you are from West Auckland and you've seen accordion players around Countdown, that's my family. So we would do this to play regularly to pay for our fees, and that's what I did in Montreal. I would lug my large accordion through the snow, set myself up in a metro, and serenade the passers-by. I did this every Friday after school, all day Saturday, generally about 8 hours, and then Sunday afternoons. Over the summer break, I would go out all day, 8 to 10 hours to pay for my school fees and then my tuition, and just to fund me through. Now, to be completely honest, I didn't actually enjoy it because after a long week of training, the last thing you want to do is just sit and play music, the same thing over and over again. But I really learned in that process that it's not always just about the skills that you have, but also if you put in those extra hard work, put in those extra miles, that's what it really requires for you to be successful. And I was willing to actually put through that extra hard work to make it through the school. And I also felt really privileged that so many other people wanted to be there, but I had also been one of those few that had been chosen. You know, and often in life, there is an element of talent. So if you're out there and you're really striving to be a professional, there is that element of talent, but that's not the only thing that is important. I have seen so many performers that, though that doesn't come as naturally to, but they've still been able to make it in a professional career. But these have been the people that are willing to put in the extra mile. And I feel like, maybe this person over here, it took you 2 years to get to the professional career that you want to make, or wherever that may be, or it takes another person 8 years, does it really matter at the end of the day if you do reach it? And what is really important is about that consistency in showing up. Another thing that I've learned in my journey is, though your skills and the amazing things that you're all showing today, and all the young people showing, that is important as a professional. That's not the only thing. Character is really important, and I would encourage you all to be growing yourself as a person. I've seen with companies where often they will not rehire artists based on character qualities. On the other side, they will rehire artists that they love working with, that are teachable, they create a good atmosphere to be around. And that is something that is really, really important, to not just grow your skill set, but to grow yourself continually as a person. My mum used to always say to us that sometimes your talent will take you places, but maybe your character may not be able to hold you there. And that's something that I've really found to be true. So I had moved after my time at school straight into a full-time professional career, and I was really, really fortunate to have signed 2 contracts upon graduation. And the first contract was with Circus, and I was playing the lead role in a show called The Stone. That ended, and 3 days later I started another contract with Cirque and touring on a show called Circus. And traveling and touring the world, it has been a privilege to share the art with people nationally, though it doesn't come without its challenges. I think for me personally, I miss some of those home-cooked meals from home, being away from family, but it has been an immense privilege to share my love of performing arts, and to be able to work for some large companies like Cirque really was a dream to come true. But as I sort of close today, I'd love to share just a couple of thoughts as I close on my journey. And my experience has been that there really is a lesson in every opportunity that comes up. Every trial and every injury. Sometimes it ends up being in redirection. For me, that injury of the fractured rib was a redirection that I never knew would take place. Me going to Melbourne was an opportunity to take up an audition that I didn't know was going to actually turn into me switching from dance into the circus industry. You know, sometimes, you know, there's no such thing as small opportunities. I once read, what you may see as the failures, those setbacks, those disappointments could be your stepping stone towards success. You also will miss 100% of those opportunities that you don't take. Give every opportunity a go, you just don't know where it will lead. No opportunity is ever wasted. Any experience, none of those experiences are wasted. Every path is a journey. Take every opportunity that comes up. You just never know where it will lead. And sometimes those smallest opportunities could be the pathway to the fulfillment of your dreams. One thing I'd really love to encourage you, or really just to hold to your heart today, is never forget also the people that helped you get to where you are today, or where you get to when you reach it. So I just want to thank you so much just for listening to my story. I just hope and I wish you all the very best in all your own personal journeys and pathways, wherever they will lead. Thank you.